So I think for a lot of support players and tank players, they might be clicking on this video and being like, hey, why do DPS need to learn how to climb? I mean, they're the character that can carry every single game, aren't they? Well, yes, they kind of are in that position, but I feel like there are a lot of things that I should talk to DPS players about that might help them actually help themselves climb up the ladder and be a lot more effective with the support players and with their tank players. And today, I'll be talking, I guess, to all of you guys about that, and mainly talking to you DPS players about what you can do to help yourself in the long term climb as a DPS main. Now, I'm going to start off saying right here, DPS is probably the strongest role to play if you want to climb, and you're probably playing the role because you've heard that it is the best role that you just climb with, honestly. One thing I want to say, though, before we begin is that if you're playing DPS just to climb, but you don't really like the character you're playing, just play the other role, play the other character that you enjoy. It doesn't matter if you have to put in 100 hours or 150 hours, play what you enjoy to rank up, and that's honestly how you're going to go up in the long run. Just make sure that you aren't a player that's playing DPS just because you want to rank up, because, as I'm going to say later, I don't even think that's the easiest way to rank up. But with all that in mind, let's just get started on some of the main things about carrying as DPS. And again, yeah, I do want to remind you guys, I know the DPS is the best role to rank up with, probably the fastest role, but there are a lot of different things that I think you have to kind of remember when you are playing this role. And the first thing I want to talk about right here is the responsibility of playing DPS. And when you're playing this role, I think you kind of have to decide from the start that you will put in the time and the practice every day to play it. DPS players in general, I think, have to be marginally more skilled than a lot of the other roles at their current rank, because there's just so much competition, and a lot of the DPS characters require so much more mechanical skill. Maybe they don't require as much positioning, but a lot of other things do make them harder characters to play, and if you want to climb as a DPS main, make sure that you accept that responsibility, that you accept that, yes, I will put in the time, and I will decide to learn this character, and that I won't just go into random games without any practice because I hope that I can maybe carry that game just because. And another thing about responsibility is realize that if you're losing a game, while yes, it's not completely your fault, in a lot of cases, it might not even be your fault at all, do realize that a lot of people will kind of blame you, and just get ready for that, honestly. DPS, again, is the role that gets that responsibility. That is pretty much chosen to say, hey, I'm picking this role, I'm going to try to carry this game, I'm going to get elims, I'm going to get damage, and if you want to climb as a DPS main, keep that in mind, and I guess keep that as a mantra. Try to become the best, as that is really what you're going to have to try to do as DPS. And I guess something else to mention about this is that I personally believe that in a lot of cases, DPS might be the hardest class to rank up as. Now, by that I mean they might take the most effort to play, not that they will take the longest amount of time. I think we can pretty generally say that support is probably the longest class to rank up as in the long run, but also probably one of the easier classes to play, to autopilot, to go on through, and DPS really doesn't have that luxury. If you're playing this role, yes, you can rank up faster than any other role. Yes, you can carry games faster than any other role, and if you are much better than everyone at your rank, you should be able to show it more than any other role. But remember as well, it will probably be some of the hardest games you're playing, so I guess kind of put that into consideration. If you want to really keep playing DPS, realize the amount of work you're going to have to put in, and just kind of accept that, and use that as a reason to keep trying harder in the future. Now let's switch topics right here and talk about one-tricks, because I know there are a lot of one-trick DPS mains, because there's a lot of DPS that are just extremely fun to play, and you want to play just that DPS. And yes, that might be a good way to rank up, and I'm going to say, hey, if you want a one-trick, sure, go ahead, one-trick, but what I'm going to recommend is that if you really want to do this, play a hero that can fit into multiple team comps, such as Tracer, Soldier, even kinda Mei. Just a hero that can do a lot of different things and that won't screw over your team if you happen to pick them every single game. Now again, you can play whoever you want to. If you want to just main Junkrat, or if you want to main Pharah, if you want to main Hanzo, if you want to main whatever, you can do that. But if you really are focusing on trying to climb in the game, it makes the most sense to one-trick a hero that can fit more situations. Maybe that may not be exact goal to climb, but I mean, if it is, kind of keep that in mind when you're picking the hero you want to play. But let's say that you aren't a one-trick, and instead you just like to main DPS and main certain characters. What should you be doing? Well, in that case, I think that you should be willing to swap every game, but don't swap unless you are either losing that game pretty hard, you have quad DPS, or just the game's not going well for you at all, or you just know that your team comp's not going to work with the character that you're playing. I've seen from people like Nateson saying that, yeah, it's a good idea to swap and make good team comps, but, I mean, if you're great at DPS, you should probably be able to carry that game even if your team comp isn't that great. And I think in a lot of cases that can be correct. I'm going to say again, do learn some other characters, become half okay as them, but don't swap unless you're just doing badly, because, I mean, if you're doing well and the game's pretty even, there's a good chance that you will be able to win that game. You're going to be getting practice on that character, and honestly, in the long run, that'll be helping you the most. Again, it's kind of controversial, but I think that can be a good way to eventually climb as a DPS main. Let's say you aren't swapping, though, and let's say you still want to kind of, help out your team in other ways, though. I think that there are quite a few things that DPS mains can do that will be a lot more useful for your team. The first thing is to actually play around your teammates and to play in a team-based game and a team-based mindset instead of just trying to play solo all game. Even if you're playing somebody like Tracer, who, of course, will flank, don't always flank. Sometimes play next to your team. Sometimes apply some damage there. And especially if you're somebody that, should be playing near the back line, play near the back line. Play where it's safe. Help out your tanks. Apply that consistent damage. And just be more consistent with your damage. Because let's say that the opponent keep getting past your choke points, it's probably because there isn't enough damage there stopping them back. Just making sure that you're playing with your teammates, I think, is an important thing for every single class. But as DPS, I see a lot of mains that just completely ignore it, just completely try to carry by themselves, and that's not how it'll often work, and that's not how you'll often be able to climb. You do need your teammates. Keep that in mind. Even if they might feel like dead weight, they can supply at least something to try to help you in that game. And another thing about teammates right here that you should try to do every single game is to combo with your teammates. Now, this could be just by simply comboing your abilities. Like, let's say you have somebody like Roadhog and you're Hanzo and, Roadhog hooks the D.Va. You should try to scatter AO that. You should try to play with your teammates like that and not just play by yourself again. But moreover than that, what you should try to do is try to combo your ultimates with your teammates. And yes, a few DPS ultimates can work completely by themselves. You got Widow, you got Tracer kind of. You got some other ults that can kind of just work by themselves. But you should be trying your best to make so that your ultimate has its highest probability of dealing damage and dealing a fatal blow to the enemy. And by playing with, let's say, your tank ultimate or your support ultimates up, I think that can make not just you do more, but make so that your support and your tank ultimates have a lot more value. A lot of the tank ults by themselves, if you look at them, they can do some damage, they can put the enemy in a lot of crowd control, but they can't always get way too many kills, and are in a lot of cases just almost useless by themselves. But if you combo them with a DPS ultimate, well, they immediately become a ton stronger, and your teammates will feel a lot stronger, and it'll feel like your teammates have a lot higher presence because, if they're comboing their ultimates with your ultimate, you're both going to be a lot more useful in that game. Saving your ultimate for your team and not just going for stuff completely by yourself all the time, I think is a good way to try to climb, and it'll allow you to get a lot more team wipes, which are a lot more necessary to actually carry and climb in a game. Because while DPS ultimates can do that, it's just a lot more consistent doing it with your teammates. And even with a support ult, which doesn't necessarily combo like, let's say, a Rhino ult would combo, if your Zenyatta ults, or your Moira ults, or your Mercy ults, or anything, they're going to be supplying a lot more healing, or some damage boost, or some combo damage with somebody in the enemy backline. And again, if you are someone like Genji, using your Dragon Blade, being almost invincible will make you a lot more effective with the Zenyatta ult or with the Lucio ult than just going in by yourself. Kind of keep that in mind and realize that this is a team game, and if you're playing with your team, you are going to be much more effective than the enemy DPS, because imagine them going in by themselves all the time. Well, they might have the chance of getting picked, while you going in with your supports, it's a lot less low. I guess it's a lot less high, and that's something that you should keep in mind when you're trying to get better at this role. And I guess the final thing I wanted to mention about DPS mains is that if you're playing DPS, and this is completely different from the last point, trying to not tilt as much as possible. I know as DPS, there's just a lot of players that I guess are prone to tilting. I don't really know exactly why. It's just kind of what happens. I guess maybe because of the type of characters, because of the role, I don't really know, responsibility, all of that put together. But if your teammates are complaining that just nobody's dying on the enemy team, try to not tilt off of that, because you have to remember that, yes, sometimes DPS can pop off all the time, but in a lot of cases, certain DPS or certain maps just need to wait for a golden opportunity to get a pick, or a golden opportunity to get a nice ultimate. or a golden combo to work with your teammates. If your team is complaining and is tilting you out of the stratosphere, sure, mute them, just continue playing, do your best, but try your best to just not get hyper tilted as this role, because you'll be throwing away a lot of possible kills. You'll be killing yourself way more than you probably should be, and I think tilting is bad on every single role, but as DPS, again, try your best to stay as little tilted as humanly possible, and that'll put you miles ahead of a lot of other DPS players. But in the end, that's all I'm going to say about DPS mains, and what I personally have seen a lot of them kind of make mistakes on as a tank player myself, and how they could be a lot more useful to the team and be a lot more useful to me, and hopefully win a lot more of their games. This is kind of what I like to try to focus on when I'm playing DPS, when I have to fill as that, which does sometimes happen. And there you guys go with that. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you enjoyed, I guess, this different perspective of what you can do to kind of climb as a DPS main. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, hit the subscribe button to see more videos like this in the future. As always, guys, thank you all for watching, hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful day.